When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello, and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Steven Sachs,
And I'm Lori Sachs.
and today we are joined by Beth Gibson, the founder and executive director of Buddy Up for Life, Buddy Up Tennis. That organization was founded in 2008 when her 3.5-year-old son, Will, who has Down syndrome, wanted to play tennis with his older brother.
And the coach saw him, and the coach included him, and that sparked that ability. And this conversation is perfect for Thanksgiving week because I'm so thankful to meet another human who's out there just so actively changing the narrative for our children and just for society in a whole, making it a better place. So this was a just uplifting conversation, helping me to rewire my own brain. And I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to have it.
So please welcome Beth Gibson.
Good morning.
Good morning,
morning.
Beth.
I love your sweatshirt.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Is that from Buddy Up?
It is. So, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
there you go.
Buddy Up
Oh,
for
that's
Life.
that's
Yes.
fantastic. I love that.
Thank you. Yes, we talk a lot about, just everybody expecting more and just, there's a lot of people make a lot of assumptions about our kids. And if given a chance and given the environment, they're capable of so much more. So we talk a lot about creating that environment for our kids to really reach their fullest potential.
That is a mantra that we that's right on board with what we say every day to every new person, every school, every situation. I think I look forward to the day that you don't have to say it. And it seems so anti-parenting to have to say that, that just please expect more. Please raise that bar for my child because he has an older sister and we never had to say that sentence. So we're so happy to have you here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, before we get any further, what if you take just a moment and just introduce yourself to our listeners?
Absolutely. So my name is Beth Gibson, and I'm the founder and executive director of Buddy Up for Life, which we started in 2008. Our youngest son, Will, has Down syndrome, and I have an older son, Keegan, who's 7 years older than Will. And when Will was 3.5 years old, my older son, Keegan's tennis coach, wanted to teach him how to play tennis. So that's kind of how we got started, and happy to share more about that at the appropriate time. So,
Love that, coach.
Yeah, right.
right?
Again, and I think this surprises other parents to hear, but it's so nice when our children are treated in the same ways as other children. Like when people just see them and are like, hey, you want to do this? And it's not like a speaking down to or anything. It's just when people just naturally see that potential and ability and blank slate.
And reaching out and saying, do you want to participate rather than, hey, you want to be on the sideline and root them on? That's sometimes the position to be put in.
Yeah.
Is maybe you can be a cheerleader type or grab a towel or something like that. And
Which are baby steps. That's at least a beginning of inclusion.
that's
but,
true.
At this point, we expect more. We expect more.
Expect more to be more.
And we my husband and I, when Will was born, and you've received the same sort of outlook, I'm sure, back because, Will's now 20. So 20 years ago, the geneticist, had nothing great to say. So, but that really lit a spark for me to prove her wrong. And I knew, that Will could do so much more if just given that opportunity. So we've always raised him, and knowing that, we have to be the engine on the train, we have to be his advocate, but also try to prepare him for, if we want him to do something like football, to help him do that. So the first time Will was in a camp, I said to the coach, Will is here for the camp. And if it's not a good fit, let me know. But he's to participate and he wants to be on the football team in middle school. And he's not going to be on the sidelines. He's not going to be running in for a touchdown before the game or after the game. He doesn't have to be a starter, but if he can keep up and earn his way, he wants to be part of the team. And we had to go through a lot of hoops, but Will played football and he was on the line and he was sometimes double teamed. And and we're like, oh, if those people only knew, but they didn't know. But it was great. But we had to advocate for him, but also set him up to have the skills to help him along the way too. So
I think that parents are afraid to have that conversation. As a community, the things that I feel have to change are equity in employment and just equity across the board when it comes to school. And all through Liam's beginning of elementary school, we've always been advocates, and that fight feels like I feel like I'm a bad guy because everybody, what you get back, you understand. We don't have to go into details of the conversations that come back at us. And a lot of other parents would say, I don't want to be the squeaky wheel. I don't want to turn over the apple cart. We had a parent say, I don't want teachers to retaliate against my student, which to me is, my goodness, that behavior would not be accepted for anyone across the board. But yet, as parents, those are the thoughts that drive our fears and propagate the exclusion, that propagate the segregation or the tokenism. And I hope it's changing, but I do think that as parents, we're afraid. We're afraid to have those conversations. And sometimes, what they'll stand on to come back at us is just like, it's at some point, I think it gets exhausting or hard to prove, or then we doubt ourselves, especially when it comes to physical sports. I want parents to just trust who they are and know that they know their student. And part of it, I feel like, is like for me, when I'm fighting for something like, hey, can you include my kid in PE? Which my daughter would have loved to have been excluded from PE. But like, she was just like, do I have to, like, she had a teacher and it was just like, do I have to run a mile in 100-degree weather? And then it's so, like you said, like from that first diagnosis, the way we're spoken to, that does put a little bit of doubt or fear in our brains, I believe. And it makes those conversations that we wouldn't hesitate to do for our neurotypical children, it makes us doubt ourselves. Like when we were fighting for inclusion in the classroom, at some point, I literally texted Stephen and I said, this is what I'm asking for, right? This is right. Like, because it isn't prevalent in society yet. It isn't something that's like, of course. So I think that as parents, we get, I don't know, we just get apprehensive and we're afraid, or we start to believe what they say to us.
Well, I've seen a lot of I have many, many things to share that I've seen a lot of parents can go in protective mode. I see a lot of our parents are very, very protective of their children and very afraid. I don't know why they're afraid, if they've gotten burned or a bad situation, or, with a lot of, I'm very, very fortunate. Will is very healthy. So I can't sit here and say like he's had multiple, open heart surgeries and all this. So we have a lot of families that are very protective naturally. We have a lot of families who really want to fight for their child or make sure that they're doing things. But I also think it's really important that we understand, because inclusion in itself, and, like sports in the classroom, if I wanted Will to be included in the classroom, it depended upon his teacher. So there was some times where he had a homework assignment and I emailed the teacher and I said, I don't think we have the tools for me to help Will to complete this assignment. And his response was, I just wanted him to be aware of what everybody else was doing. And that sent me spiraling. So whereas he would have other teachers who would sit and we would try to learn how Will learned in a multiple choice or true false. And true false can be very tricky for our kids to answer. So how do we want them to answer some things? How do we know that he understands the content and to what level? But I also think that there has to be that happy balance of, as much as we want our kids included, even in the school system, I advocated for him to, to have someone working with him for reading and writing because he was not great on. So he needed extra attention and he needed some extra attention with math and different things. So I think that there's a balance, and that's why our organization exists, because we can set up our kids to learn different sports and tennis or pickleball and fitness and be able to focus on those things that they particularly need. So in tennis, we spend a third of our time focusing on fitness with core strengthening and coordination and balance. And, and a big part of our program is listening and having respect and showing teamwork and being a good teammate and, having sportsmanship and learning the rules and following, so they can take those skills and then go play amongst their peers. So I do think sometimes it's nice to have a balance of creating a learning environment where our kids really can be set up to succeed and give them the tools to go out amongst their peers and really show the world how capable they are. So
Yeah, well, one, physical sports is good for the brain. It helps everyone across the board to like cognitively
Intellectually,
and
yeah.
intellectually. Sorry.
No,
I should go run around the block.
it's early.
It's early. But like you said, like learning those, that was one of the things in middle school. I kept trying to push for Liam to be part of the PE class, and the coach was afraid. So he has an excellent coach in high school, and she took a couple weeks to watch and give him challenges, and then she was like, no, he's got this. But I said he has to now learn the teamwork. Like there's other things. Like I don't in middle school, I just wanted him to participate so he could understand how teams work, how we take turns, like what are the rules of the game. And those are really important across the board. And they kept pulling him out to just, one-on-one with a special adaptive coach. But for 4 years, they threw a ball. There was no like integrated sports. There was not even to just like, he wasn't even given the opportunity to be aware of what other people were doing in the PE. Like that wasn't even offered.
Well, and then the times that he did participate in a team sport, he was a bit of a token, where then he would just, there were different rules for him.
You're talking about running.
Yes.
Running? Yeah.
Well, the running, and also I remember there was like a kickball, and he would get extra turns, or okay, try again, or someone would be like, well, I'm not going to throw him out. So there's that.
We threw Will into when he was young, we had him in Taekwondo, and that's an environment where he was treated the absolute saints, and it was very important. There was a lot of tumbling and things. So again, it was really focusing on building that core, but really following directions.
Mm-hmm.
And he loved it and he thrived. So I would throw him in every single sports or things like from horseback riding to swimming. And I would do things from Special Olympics to typical world and everything in between. And he, I think it's just setting the precedence. He's a part of the team, and he started with Little League, and he advanced all through when he was 12. And it was a really fun sport for him because, our kids are such visual learners. And when they're young and playing baseball, they would rotate the pitchers, and he would have the exact form because he would watch on TV how a pitcher pitched the ball, and he would have the exact form and he would pitch it, and it might be slower than everyone else's, but it was perfect. So then someone would hit a pop-up and he was out. So then, he would have like 3 up, 3 down or 4. And so he could really prove himself through some sports too. And it's just a matter of finding that connection where someone will give him an opportunity and setting the precedence. He is just like everyone else. And even I remember one time when he was playing Miracle League, and he took a bat out to right field and he was an outfielder. We were like, whoa, whoa, no, 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 like,
Yes.
and we stopped that right there. And I'm sure they're like, who are the crazy parents? But the premise is, even at 4 years old or however old they are, like, you have to play by the rules. If we want them to play by the rules later, that has to be inbred, and there can't be expectations that they can get away with things, because that just, I've seen it come into bad behavior, or that expectation they don't have to follow the rules. So it's,
Hmm.
you know, it's sports is a fun pathway.
I like to look at all the misperceptions because I don't find, like, when we sit with the geneticists and they say all those things, I don't really find many of them to be true. And I want to say, yes, Liam is pretty on the healthy side, and I know that health ranges vary. So, but I also believe that health ranges vary for neurotypical students. And I think that if we can have that mindset, like, what would a neurotypical student do as participation? Like, they would make those allowances. So not to discount anybody's journey or anything like that. It needs to at least be a conversation and an expectation that of the equality there and of the opportunity.
It's something that reminds me of in the fact of football. When we take Liam out for Halloween, I remember there were some early Halloweens where he wear a mask, and it just felt so like equal. I mean, like even Halloweens later on where people obviously realized he had Down syndrome. When they come up, they might say, "Okay, one candy bar for each person," and then it's like, "Oh, hey, buddy, you can have 4." But with football, having a helmet on and pads and stuff, I mean, that was like. You were talking about maybe the kids didn't even realize that he had
They
Down syndrome.
did.
That's now you're in Ohio.
Correct. Columbus, Ohio.
Because we had interviewed a few years ago Caden Cox, who is the first person with Down syndrome to score a point in a college football game, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, the fact that he could get on the field and do it with everyone
Have the
trying.
opportunity.
Yes, and that everyone was trying. Everyone was trying to block a field goal or block him from scoring. And there was a point where Caden's dad and mom told us about a time where they were on the 1 yard line, and actually prior to the extra point, they put him in to score a touchdown. And this might have been a different game, and he got stopped. And that's exciting that he didn't make it, but everyone's trying. Mm-hmm. And sure, he didn't make it, but that's the lesson we all learn, and we get to learn. Sometimes our kids don't get to learn those tough lessons of, well, I was given an opportunity and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that's critical, because a lot of times as society evolves, like right now, I think sometimes a lot of inclusion is letting them be a part of it, but not necessarily participate at the level of everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And they're kind of still a token, or they're not being treated equally. Our kids should not have handouts, because then they have the expectation, if they go in to score a touchdown, or they go in and they get 5 bags of cookies, for Halloween. And we've worked so hard to teach them
I know.
just one. And sometimes they just show up and Will comes out with a free lunch from Chipotle or something. And I know he got a free lunch because he has Down syndrome. And it's just like, we're teaching him how to use Venmo and money, and you're not helping us. So, and that's it. Society sometimes is hurting our kids more than helping, because they're just trying to do for them, and doing for them is not helping, it's disabling, as opposed to providing them with an opportunity to participate just like everyone else.
Like a job at Chipotle where he can get 50% or a free meal with his shift, right?
He has to earn it.
I used to be really frustrated about the journey, but I feel like that's because society doesn't understand, and that's the only way they know how to give. And I always try to think that people have the best intentions. That narrative just needs to be changed across the board of, hey, maybe there's a National Down Syndrome Day where you celebrate, disability pride, and everybody with Down syndrome gets a free Chipotle. That's super cool. That's helping. But I think that I think that people don't know how to do better, because the whole system needs to change, and it's like incremental. Do you know
they're
what I
just
mean?
doing what they've seen in the past.
But what that does to our kids is they expect this other thing. And then that becomes the misperception of Down syndrome people will be like, oh, people with Down syndrome are pretty stubborn. And I challenge you
Yes.
to say, if I got everything I wanted and was never told no, and was told I just need to watch my friends do biology and I don't have to, and I'm still going to get an A, and I don't have to be challenged in any way, you know what? I'm going to be pretty stubborn if you try to challenge me.
Or if I
you,
just say no 3 times and then every time I do
right.
that, I get a yes.
Yes. And so
And so yeah, I'll try no 3 times.
yeah, and that's one of the things. Like, it's like that's how, like you said, we need to be we everybody needs to work for it. Everybody needs to understand that, yeah, sometimes you're going to get it right off the bat. And sometimes you're going to be challenged and have to do it a few times in order to get it right. And that teaches us so it's so much a part of our character, and they're robbing our kids. Even the teacher who just wants your kid to be aware of what's going on and is going to give them an A. I had that come back at me, and they're like, well, he's getting an A in that class. And I'm like, I don't care about that. I care about what was the lesson that he didn't get to learn. What did he miss? Because my kid's in school to learn, and I sent Liam to school every day, and I said, it's your job to learn. It's their job to teach, because he's experienced that, and he'll get really frustrated because he's not being taught, and he knows he's not being taught. And if you want to talk about the football thing with the helmet, I know for us as parents, like, there's a moment of pride, of freedom, of like, hey, our kid was treated the same, right? But what about the kid to be treated the same? Because our kids are intellectual, our kids are empathetic, our
They
kids are
understand.
so smart and understand, they know when they're being placated. They know, when they're a token. I know 100%, because it's like, here I am, and everybody's going to cheer for me. They see what other people do. And I do think the opportunities where someone might physically not be able to do it, if that's for the student, then, but I still think they should get that, like, autonomy of it being about them and not about everyone else, because that resonates in them and their ability.
I think that's why our organization exists, really, because we've set out to create an environment where our athletes and in our health and wellness pillar, anyone with Down syndrome we refer to as our athletes, and in our education pillar, anyone with Down syndrome is a student. So our athletes first, we meet our athletes where they are, and knowing that even though all of the individuals have Down syndrome in our organization, there are multiple different levels, but we provide a pathway for them to grow. And you would never age out or, be too good not to participate, but there's always multiple different levels for them to grow. And on that journey, they are partnered with a volunteer, and that volunteer is trained to raise the bar. They're trained to meet them where they are. They're trained to dial back so they can find success, or to push them forward so that they can find success and be challenged. And they're also trained to, one of the things I say to our volunteers is, our athletes may have trouble expressing themselves, but they can read you like a cheap novel. They know exactly how you feel. They know exactly what you're saying. They understand you 100%. And
Yeah.
if they say no, that's not accepted, so they have to follow along, and we have to figure out, how to engage them if they're disengaged. So, we kind of pride ourselves on creating this fun environment, but it's an environment for them to learn and grow and succeed, and have the toolkit to take them off the pickleball court or off the tennis court or out of the gym, and really try to take those tools to be able to function well, amongst their peers.
Can we talk about the origins of Buddy for Life?
Sure, sure. So when Will was 3.5 years old, as I said, my older son's tennis coach wanted to teach Will how to play tennis. And at the time, that was 2008. So in 2008, adaptive tennis was for someone in a wheelchair, or for someone that couldn't afford to play the sport. So we essentially created our own curriculum. And that was created with the coach and myself. And again, I mean, poor Will, or good for Will, he's been our guinea pig throughout the whole journey. So as I said earlier, I threw him into everything that I could think of to see how he would respond. And so we ended up creating a program for individuals with Down syndrome who are 5 years and over. Um, and as I said, no one could age out, and it provided a pathway for them to grow and learn. And we knew that fitness was such a big part of what we wanted to teach as well. And we also know that tennis is, it could be intimidating, especially with some, and it requires a lot of motor planning. And so we definitely wanted to have that fitness piece where we focus on some ball control and tracking, and knowing that the tracking was a really big part of that. Just because a lot of our athletes have a depth perception issue, or just we want them to be able to anticipate where that ball is going to be going. So we spend time on that, and agility, and coordination, balance, and speed and strength. So we spend a third of our program on fitness, and then with tennis. And then in 2010, the United States Tennis Association learned about our program, and they wanted us to share our program at the Cincinnati Open, which is the last step before the US Open for all the major tennis players. And we did an exhibition there, and I contacted the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati, said, hey, we're going to be in Cincinnati. Would any of your members want to join us on the courts? And about 10 or 12 folks did come. And then a board member was like, hey, we need this program, and was not thinking about expansion, was not thinking, how would I do this? But I was like, sure, okay. And no, that was 2010. So then, people started to reach out to us. I mean, I think, we're the epitome of a grassroots organization. I did not go after any of our locations where we are. I never said, hey, can we come and open a tennis program? Typically a Down syndrome association or family would reach out to us. So, we started growing, got some legs, and we have over 20 chapters across the United States now in tennis. We are in heavily Midwest, because we're Midwest, but we have some chapters in Florida and Texas and Arizona and Tennessee and Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania. So we have a national footprint. And then really, what's happened within the organization is, well, there's multiple things happen, is, as I said, you don't age out, so our families stay. We have a very high retention rate. Even if someone may take a break to do basketball or something else, they come back after the season's over. And so you get to know your families. And then families start sharing, here, hey, what have you thought about, or they're, Will is very, very strong, and they're like, what's Will doing? And Will was taking some additional fitness training. Like, we need a fitness class. Okay. So we got with Will's trainer, and we created a HIT circuit training program. And we have over 10 fitness programs now that are across the country as well. Then parents said, hey, what about a summer camp? Should we have a summer camp? I said, okay. So we created a summer camp, which was great. We only do it for a week, but it's a half day, 5 days a week, where we do fitness and tennis. And then we introduce something new. So maybe provide an opportunity that our athletes haven't been able to experience. And then sometimes with those new experiences, we learn about creating other programs. Like, we had a Zumba instructor come in. So now we have Zumba. So, we'll do anything from arts and sciences to, science experiment, to cardio drumming, to playing soccer, just to do something fun and provide an opportunity. So we have our Zumba class, summer camps, and then really as Will got older, we're in a great school system. However, I do think our kids can fall through the cracks in multiple levels, and we know that if you don't use it, you lose it. And, we have to keep things top of mind, what we really want them to know. So we started creating some life skill programs. And so we have life skill programs that we focus on communication, finance, technology, personal safety, and cooking. And then we also have a core concepts for those who may need some additional support, who maybe aren't at that third grade reading level, where like in cooking, we've created recipes that are all visual based so that they can follow along and follow the recipe visually. And, just the finance there is just really focusing on um, money and just counting and coin identification and things. And the technology there is like what's usable technology, whether it's, learning a QR code, learning with pictures, taking pictures, or, how to communicate through, some pictures and different things. So we've dialed some of our classes back. And then the capstone, we have a communities program where there's an apartment, and really working on those daily functional living skills, really learning. I think we're all striving for independence for our children. Everybody's level of independence is going to be a little bit different based on their situation and families, where they want to see their child. So, but really trying to help them gain some additional independent skills. So, what started from a tennis lesson now has really blossomed into a little bit of everything for our kids. So
Where is that coach now?
he's still with our program.
Oh, that's
Yes,
great.
yes, he's still with our tennis, and it's really been a family. He's part of our family, and watched him get married and has two kids, and now his kids help when they can. And they're young, but they want to be on the tennis courts too, and helping our athletes. So he's still very much connected in the program.
Do you have one of those cookbooks? Have you made that into a cookbook, the visual cookbook?
I do not have cookbooks, but we have all the recipes I can share with you.
Because I
And
think
we
that's such a, I'm going to give you another thing on
Yeah,
your
right.
list.
We need a summer program. We need a
yes.
cookbook.
We need no, because when you said that, I'm like, that is just
It
a
is brilliant.
brilliant.
It is really
that's
brilliant.
brilliant. And if to
Yeah.
have those recipes,
Yeah, so we created a great cooking class, and the cooking class we developed to create skills. So talking about, just our first cooking class, all of our classes are semester long, but our first semester of cooking is focusing on kitchen safety, knife safety, and we had some parents freak out because we gave our students chef knives, but we want to teach them how to cut properly. Some may don't have the wrist strength. So, we found adaptive knives, and, we give them all a guard and different things. But if you teach someone how to do it correctly, then they'll be able to do it. So, this mother was like, oh my goodness, I've only let her use a plastic knife. And I was like, I bet that was really hard to cut.
Yeah.
But, like if you use children's scissors as an adult, that's really hard to cut. They're super dull.
yeah.
And so, we have a lot of recipes to help reiterate a skill of chopping, dicing, and and then we go into the different methods of boiling and sautéing and sheet pan meals and baking and different things. But then, we realized there were some students that couldn't read enough to follow the recipe. So then that's when we were very practical and like mapped out, how do you do scrambled eggs with a picture? How do you do French toast? Just some basic, healthy, simple things that everybody likes, grilled cheese and a quesadilla. So just some basic things that not only help develop the skills, provide a recipe, but then it's something that they would like.
And then providing accommodations along the way, just like you would in school, like just, here's a guard or whatever for the knife. Yeah, that's really
Right.
great.
And we found some great tools. We have, some special measuring cups so that it's really quite handy so that, if you have to do 3/4 cup, you don't have to take a fourth cup 3 times. There's actually a 3/4 cup. So, we've done a lot. We've we've spent a lot of time and energy creating our curriculums, and we're seeing great success with our students.
That's something that a lot of typical kids could use. I mean, it used to be a thing, and I remember
Home
my
ec.
my parents probably had home ec, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. We see that a lot. It's funny, especially like our finance class. We have our finance class at Fifth Third Bank when the bank closes. And there might be someone in real estate who's finishing up a deal or working on something, and we're preparing for class. And they're like, wow, my son could really use that too. Because I mean, like, I'm a firm believer in learning about money and old school ledgers. I mean, like our kids, my typical didn't have a ledger when he opened up his checking account. I'm like, how can he not see what's coming and going? So I mean, we teach our students, the value of money and watching it come in and out, and how do you get money, and even signing a check. I know you don't use checks all that much, but grandma and grandpa are still probably giving you a check maybe for your birthday, and can you endorse it? And we have volunteers with all of our programs that start in high school, and we're teaching the high schoolers, yeah, this is how you endorse a check. So there's typicals out there that we're helping along the way, or writing a thank you note, and making sure, where's the return address go?
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Oh my goodness. There's so many things that kind of get lost because, I think
Correct.
about when, I could go to a store and it was like, "Oh, it's 5:31," and I give them some money, and then here's a penny. And that today would just could totally throw a clerk,
Yes.
especially a younger person that it doesn't have the skills because they're Venmoing or whatever, or it's all computer based where they don't have to think. And so you can get yourself in these times where, even in a protective way for your child to not be taken advantage of, just to know these things, so that they're not even tricked when it comes to money.
Right. And that's why, we've spent time teaching the fundamentals in money and basic budgeting, and knowing wants versus needs and goods versus services, just to be able to wrap your arms around that. And then as we've taught Will and our students some of those basic principles, I did give him, teach him about Venmo, because he's at college right now. And if I want him to be amongst his typical peers,
He can't pull out a checkbook.
he's not pulling out his
Yes.
checkbook. So, but he is Venmoing, and it was, it took a little bit for him to understand, because we would intentionally have him pay for something and then have someone reimburse him. And he's very quick to spend my money, but he's being very tight on his own money. So he was very upset, to buy something for someone else, but then understanding though that the Venmo was going back to him. So, but again, it's equipping our kids, the understanding some fundamentals and being able to participate with their peers.
That's a milestone. And for your child to say, or I don't know what you would call an older child. I don't,
He's still our child, yeah.
but honestly, that's the same experience with our daughter, who's now like an adult, in the graduated from high school, and it's like she's seeing that difference. And I think that's one of the things that I'm never like ignorant to the challenges or the differences. I know those have been given to me from day one. But I feel like on my journey, it's like shining light on the similarities. That's a similarity. And when you were saying about you're talking about a neurotypical going into a store that has a neurotypical clerk, but those neurotypical people are given the allowance of, sorry, you just didn't get that, you didn't receive that education. And the thing is that one, our student may be because we're making them learn it, but also if they haven't learned whatever they haven't learned, it's not their doing. And that same patience and that same, potential and vision of them, that should be their privilege too. Do you know? Like that's one of the things, and that I really strive for people to understand that. Like that's something that my students should be given.
I think that's something that I've seen in the volunteer part of our organization. So we call our volunteers buddies, and they can start as early as 14. And we have, everyone and every type of person that wants to help. But I especially love the high school and college students. And they're the ones that are open-minded. They're the ones that are giving our students the chance. And part of it comes from, I mean, there has to be that desire and belief because they showed up to our program, A. Then we have given them, like, here's our philosophy. We believe in raising the bar. We believe in having expectations, but it is critical that we provide the environment for them to learn and succeed and to equip them with the tools and our volunteers with the tools to do that as well. But we've seen our volunteers, once they come into the organization, and of course there's some that come because they have to fulfill requirements for high school. But what's so cool is they stay. And we've seen volunteers who have, ended up going to college to become an OT or speech therapist. And this is something that was never on their radar before. And we have volunteers that participated. I had a volunteer that participated in our Cincinnati tennis program. And then a couple weeks ago, he is now a sophomore at Princeton, and he brought Buddy Up Tennis to Princeton because he loved the organization so much and still wanted to be able to give back to the community. We had someone start in Columbus in our tennis program in high school. Now she's graduated from college and lives in Austin, Texas. And we just opened up a pickleball in Austin, Texas last month because it was something she still wanted to bring to her new community. So I do think there's a lot of hope out there. And I do see it with a lot of the younger, not to say my age is not, I think we were all raised differently. And I think, some of our age has a little bit different expectations, but I see a lot of our teens and young 20s just have a completely different perspective, which gives me a lot of hope because they're the ones who, if they see Will and Will might need a little help with Venmo, that are like, instead of saying, don't worry about it, I will help you figure this out. And they want to teach them to give them the skills.
We've said it many times that, it's particularly Gen Z, we've noticed like just an openness in so many different ways. That's just kind of how they're coming up, is like they're just open to a lot of things that we were,
They
I don't
see
know
everybody.
if we were brought up a little different, like you said. We
definitely were.
Yeah, I never had anybody with Down syndrome in a
Look at the
classroom.
movies and the television from that, like.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can look at it. We cringe at, movies that
Anyway.
we bring into the house sometimes and say, oh, this
And all of a
80s
sudden-
movie that I think
and you're
holds
like,
up, and you go, ew, forgot about that.
Oh yeah, that word was okay.
Yeah, but the thought process of and it could be across the board, that more accepting of anybody's differences, and then open to learning about it, and maybe there's maybe there was a fear factor when you look back at my generation, our generation, where we just didn't know, and you get afraid of things that you don't know sometimes, and you keep pushing that back, and you're kind of taught to stay your lane, be with your people, and type of thing, and it's different.
It's an evolution. When Will was first born and my husband's grandmother was still living, and the first thing she thought was he was going to have to go to an institution, and that wasn't her being mean
Right.
or anything. It was, oh no, because in her day, that's the way it was. And then you think about, when I think about when I was in grade school, there was a room. So, like there was progress. Our kids got to go to school, but I didn't really know any of them. And they were behind a door, a classroom all day. So I don't think they had lunch with us or were integrated at all. So then you see, okay, they're in school, and then they're allowed in your art class or gym class or lunch, they're allowed to show up. So I think there's progress, but I know there's so much more. So, that's why, we just put our head down and work really hard to show the world and to give our students and athletes an opportunity to really prove the world wrong.
Well, it is, like you said, it is evolution. It comes from, like we always bring it back to, the Industrial Revolution. That's when it started and all that. And that's what we're undoing. and we're undoing it slowly, like a knot in a chain. And I love this generation. I love, for all the reasons that I feel like they get criticized, that's what the world needs. And that's especially what's going to help change things for, especially, our kids. That's, people who see them and don't buy into whatever's been propagated. And I think that's the difference, is like, for, there is a spectrum, but there's a spectrum for every human. Like, for humanity, there's a spectrum of ability, and we all learn different. We all have different abilities and strengths and weaknesses and challenges, and some are seen and some aren't seen. All we want is to be included in that conversation and treated with equanimity, and to be like, okay, I'm going to see who's in front of me, not who's somebody, we don't know who wrote that piece of paper, not the paper that comes, along with that person. It's who's standing in front of me. What do they need? What can they do? What is their potential? And I'm going to feed into the potential, not into my prejudice. And I think that's what I see. That's what I see with like these just beautiful, inclusive humans.
They are so open-minded.
They're taught that, though. They're
Correct.
taught it. They've been taught it, and they've also learned it by observing and knowing. And that's one of the gifts of social media, is like, we can't be faulted on our generation that was like this and didn't see anything, right? We only saw what was right in front of us and what was told to us. But now the world is open, and it's like, okay, how can we carve something new? And I think that is what's happening. I feel like I cut you off on something earlier, so I want to make sure that you got to say.
I don't
it was
think
like
you cut me off.
We talked about, was it the volunteer
I was going to
arm?
ask, Beth, what's your background? Like, how does this happen that I want to create something, and you do? I mean, this
and
is
how
fantastic.
do people get to create more? And can we have a link to all of your
Of course, people want to reach out
locations,
to you.
and
yeah.
and also the ability, like, if they listen to this and say
Expansion.
expansion,
Like, yes.
Beth, I
hey,
got an
Beth,
idea.
we need something in Canada.
we need something in Los Angeles.
Yes, yes. So you can go to our website, it's buddyupforlife.org. You can see all of our chapters that are currently existing. And of course, we're in a growth spurt again. So we're happy to, discuss any possibilities of bringing a program to your community. My background is retail, actually. So I'm service oriented, so that's why I never said no. I was like, sure, we can do this. But with retail, and I was in merchandise planning, so a few things I learned along the way. So I can manage the organization financially. We've always been, you know, um, being a nonprofit's always tricky. I mean, for me to go into an open buy meeting and ask for money was a little bit different than now me having to go to a donor or write a grant or something, but I can still balance a budget and be fiscally responsible. So that I had some experience with. One thing though, in planning and allocation with my background though, we test before we rolled. So you always tested something. So before I expanded, we made sure we had a very good, strong foundation. I was very slow and methodical about things, and we only opened one per year. So our organization could probably be a little bit bigger, perhaps. I don't know, but I was very slow out of the gate because I wanted to make sure that what we did, we were doing well. And so that is something that I also try to do now. Is Columbus is our home base. So all programs start here. So we want to make sure, that we try to kind of perfect our curriculum here or try new things here. And once we do open up a chapter, we do like to keep in touch. And that's because there's a lot of great coaches out there, and we don't have all the answers, and we want to keep learning. We're a learning organization. So we want to know what others are doing and other successes that they're finding. So then, it's up to us to take those learnings and then channel it out to all of our other chapters. So I think in some ways, my retail background has helped with that. My tennis coaches in Columbus are very full aware of a hindsight meeting that we always had hindsight meetings. There's not a lot of tennis coaches that can sit down and I'm like, okay, but it's what everyone in business wants to know, or even in school, what's working, what is not working, how can we improve? So, I think just having that sense of always wanting to make sure what we're doing is impactful and it is working. So some of those fundamentals that I learned in business, you know, again, not all my fitness trainers want to have a hindsight meeting, but it's helpful. So I like to think that there's some basic fundamental skills that I've learned along the way. And also it's, as a parent, I get it. So I can, speak to a lot of parents and, like right now in our tennis program, like even in Columbus, we have a big group of kids that are between 5 and 9. And those kids they're on the court for 90 minutes. That's a long time for someone with Down syndrome. Like typicals aren't even necessarily on the court. And some of the moms get really frustrated or upset because their child's not following along. And I'm like, give me 2 weeks. Like they have to come regularly. They have to get into the routine. They have to understand the expectations. And sometimes it's hard to watch. And then I'm just like, well, there's a lot of strategies we've put in place. And one is I've taught them how to work with an escape artist. I'm like, my son was an escape artist. There's the sitter. We have all of these different behavioral things. I was like, do you want to know why we can teach our volunteers to do this? I've lived through it. So if you start a program and your child's 3.5, you're going to learn a lot of behavioral tips.
That's amazing. That's that's such a, because we just take those, like as parents, we are fed the information that's just how it is. Right? That's just how it is. And I love that you're changing the conversation. And I love that you're showing not the student only what they can do, but the parent, because that's really, we as parents,
because they're going to take that home.
We are the advocates more so than we are for our neurotypical children.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to be rewired as much as society, as much as our student. We need to be rewired to expect more.
Funny story, in my summer camp, I had a provider take a 14-year-old athlete to the restroom. And I said, what are you doing? She's like, he needs help. And I said, can he work an iPad? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, he can wipe his own bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me. And then 2 days later, she was like, guess who's wiping his own bottom? But it's like, but our kids are fully capable of doing some things. And some it may take longer than others to learn. But if you are given that opportunity and that expectation, like, he needs to be able to go into the restroom, and it's just, finding the tool that's going to help, like I mean, these are like silly things, but just cutting his fingernails. I'm like, buddy, you have to cut your fingernails. And I'm always like, am I going to paint them? They're too long. Or are you going to cut them? Right? I'm like, make a decision here. But, the little clippers are kind of hard for him. And he has great motor skills and that's tough for him. But then it's just a matter of finding that right tool. And I found like little electric ones. You just stick your finger in and it's not harmful.
No, this sounds great.
We're
this sounds awesome.
We need a list from you.
But just like, you got to just keep looking for the tools, because
it's accommodations, right? It's just accommodations.
It is. And it's just making your brain think. Before I would always try to find things and they might have been someone like younger than him, a tool that was successful with someone younger. Now what I found with like the nail clippers, it's really thinking like elderly, like if they've struggled with something, what helped them. So it's just like, it has to Amazon has to have it somewhere,
Exactly.
It has to be out there. It has to be out there. So,
and what a shift in our thinking, because it does affect, I know me, it does affect us to have our 15-year-old son, and we're looking for an accommodation for like an infant, or because that sends the message to us as parents that is where the bar is. Whereas if we look at a full grown adult that might have the same challenges, that's going to shift how we see our child. That will rewire the way we think.
And I think it's critical to think about, like, when you're looking for tools and things, it's not the intellect. It's like thinking about someone that might have a physical disability or something. It's rewiring
Mm-hmm.
different tools that are out there, because it's a lot of times teachers or people will even think that we have to look at things because of their intellect, and it's not necessarily that. It could be their motor skills or different things. So,
well, your program is helping to rewire society's thoughts, parents' thoughts, and our own children's and students' thoughts, because that's all
athletes.
Reflexive to them. Yeah, the athletes.
Just to be called an athlete.
Yeah.
It's fun. On our tennis shirts, on the back, there's athletes, and then the volunteers are buddies, and then there's coaches. And a lot of times our parents say, their kids are dressed for tennis. They're not dressed for school. They're not up, but they want to be part of the team, and this is their team, which is critical. I mean, everybody needs a team.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you one little thing? And I know this might not settle with everyone, but this is my brain, is that I love that the volunteers are buddies. The volunteers are buddies, because
Liam's been called buddy a lot,
and he's probably is somebody's buddy. But the word, it just, because I had somebody like not see him, and then when they decided they wanted to see him, they were like, "Come here, buddy," and I got so mad. And I was just like, "His name's not Buddy," because there are people named Buddy, but I was like, "His name's not Buddy. His name is Liam, and that's what you can call him." And I didn't say it like I was a little angry.
That's what you were thinking.
Some of it came out probably.
But it's okay to get angry at someone who decides not to see your child, and then when they're ready to see your child, that they then use a word that's really been used to tokenize.
Right.
The volunteer is the buddy, and we are the athlete. You know what? My buddy's going to help me. That's great. I love that. That's a rewiring.
And our kids are athletes.
But that's for that's them. They're getting this foundation of, I'm the athlete.
And the buddies are learning. I mean, if you take time to talk with our buddies, they'll tell you they're learning from our athletes. They're inspired from our athletes. Like, our kids have so many challenges, and they're taught to overcome them, or they're given the opportunity to try to overcome them.
That's a beautiful learning experience for the buddies, right? Because that's what Stephen and I say in every IEP meeting that we've ever sat in, when they try to tell us how this is so good for Liam if he can be, in the class, just being aware of what other people are doing. But Stephen, one of his things is like, it's not just about Liam's got it. Liam's got it. He knows strength. He knows perseverance. He knows how to work hard. He needs to be included. The kids on the other side, they're the ones who will benefit. Right? They're the ones who will really learn and change and grow in all the best ways.
Because Liam is an asset. And so defining that he is the asset, knowing that he's just not going to learn from others, but he can teach, is wonderful.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of, like, that teacher has to be able to appreciate that, or the coach or whomever see them in a different light, as not the token. But again, because there are so many things that our children have to overcome, and they're like, will try something till he gets it. And all of our kids have something special and unique to offer, and they are an asset, and it's not a token asset. They're truly an asset, and they, I think they motivate others. And even when Will was on playing football and he was at the line, and sometimes the guys behind, they were not going to help him, but they were very aware of what was going on. So we were like, that team does better when Will's in, because maybe of course he's not the best person on the team, or he wasn't the star player or anything by strength, but they were very aware and very focused of what was going on. I'm like, why don't you keep them in for some more plays? I bet the team would be better.
'Cause that-
Probably made them better teammates.
Right? And
That's
it
how
did.
aware they should always be, right?
Mhm.
Correct. You should always be giving your best.
And protecting each other. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, Beth, it's been so
Oh
wonderful
my gosh,
talking
I'm
to
so
you.
happy to meet you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I mean, this is the week of Thanksgiving, and I'm so thankful for everything that you've done and all the programs and all the change that you're cultivating, just like across the board.
Well, thank you. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to share and to get to know you and be so like-minded and love to help in any way we can. So thank you and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.